So we are at chapters 11 through 13 of Turtles All the Way Down. And I really would love to know what you're thinking about this book. I think actually tomorrow's assignment, I'm just going to have you tell me what you think about the book so far because I love John Green. And I really think this is a really interesting book. I really enjoy reading it. This is the second time I've read it. So I hope you're enjoying it so far. What we're going to do today is a close reading organizer again, and I will go through what you're supposed to do, although you've already done 2 close reading organizers, so by now you really should know, okay? But I will give you a quick recap. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about the spiral theme again, or I'm sorry, the spiral symbol again, the symbol of that spiral, the downward spiral. And I also want to cover a couple of things that I think if you understand them, it'll better enhance your reading experience because you'll better understand what Asa and Davis are talking about when we get to chapter 12. So most of the summaries that you're reading today are going to directly relate to the symbol of the spiral, because that's what we talked about in Monday's assignment, and I want to keep reinforcing that. So we're talking about themes, but now we're also adding that layer of symbolism, and I want you to consider the symbol as well as the themes. So you'll see here in my notes, it says, I have focused mostly on quotes that include the spiral symbol to reinforce what we discussed in yesterday's lesson about symbolism. But notice, there seems to be this stuff about space and stars popping up over and over. So I think that's worth thinking about as well. And I want you to kind of think about how space and stars might be symbolic. Okay? So the directions, again, are read each summary entry and think about which themes listed in the themes key apply to it. Then color in those themes in the theme tracker. Next, write a few sentences of analysis to explain how the themes you chose apply to each summary section. So here's our themes key. We've seen it like 5 or 6 times now, so I'm not going to read it. The summary here is Asa feels fine until she and Daisy are in Harold on their way to the bank. You know what? I think Harold's kind of a symbol too, but I won't get into that right now. Think about that too. Daisy chatters about how her most recent piece of fan fiction went viral and retiring from Chuck E. Cheese's, while Asa thinks that the medication might be working since she feels better. Suddenly, Asa thinks that the medicine is making her complacent and she hasn't changed her Band-Aid in over 24 hours. Asa's mind persists in thinking that she has an infection and certainly forgot to change the Band-Aid. So, before we talk about themes, just like, what do you think about this fan fiction Daisy writes? I think that the thing that really got me was when Chewbacca and Rey suddenly became this romantic item. Like, so weird, right? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I think it's a little off the deep end. But knowing that people who are fans of Star Wars can be really, really big fans of Star Wars, I'm sure that there is plenty of Star Wars fan fiction out there. I had to laugh about the romance between Rey and the Wookiee. That's just silly. Anyway. All right. So I've highlighted 1, identity, selfhood, and mental illness. And I've highlighted 2, chaos, order, and control. Or rather, I've colored them in. Okay? Because when I click on here and I go up here to the little bucket, I can change the color. So that's what I've done. So here's what I see happening here. If I analyze this, okay, as Asa experiences her thoughts, the reader sees exactly how much power Asa's fearful mind has over her. She can't finish the task of driving and has to pull over to attend to her intrusive thoughts. Sorry, something in my throat. So the fact that this fear arose after wondering if she was in control shows Asa's greatest fear is that something else might be controlling her. Here's what I see happening. Asa's medication, her meds, are doing what they're supposed to do. They are calming her anxiety. Not clamming, but calming, right? Therefore, she isn't as obsessive compulsive about her Band-Aid. Right? So now she feels like the meds are controlling her. And her only way to fight back is to once again obsess and have those intrusive thoughts about the Band-Aid and the infection. Like, she is so worried about being controlled by a pill that she is preventing herself from getting well, because the pill is, in fact, what is helping her get well. But as she gets well, she thinks she's getting worse because she can't control her own feelings. And you see this idea of the spiral? It keeps going round and round and round and round in her head, okay? So now she feels like the meds are controlling her, and she tries to regain control by obsessing over the Band-Aid. It's like this vicious cycle. We say that vicious cycle, something that keeps going in circles over and over and over again. You can't make it stop. All right? So you want to write your analysis in here and explain how you think it connects to these themes. So we have mental illness, and we have chaos versus order and control. There you go. So you're going to do that for all of these. All right. A couple things I want to point out before you start your assignment today, though. Number two here on the notes. Let's talk a little bit about William Butler Yeats and his poem, The Second Coming, before we do today's assignment. The Second Coming, if you click on this, you'll see the poem. It actually has a lot of allusions to the apocalypse, or the second coming of Christ, the second coming of Jesus, as many Christians believe that, Jesus died and went to heaven, and, because he was reborn, and now he lives in heaven, even though he was raised from the dead, and that he will come back again, kind of at the end of times, to have this final battle between good and evil. Okay? So the second coming, the title and that idea comes from this idea that Jesus Christ will once again come to earth to have this final battle with evil and save everybody from sin and evil. And this poem is referenced here in chapter 12, okay? And I want you to see why it's referenced, because John Green doesn't just choose this poem randomly. He chooses it very, very purposefully, okay? And in the very first line, he says, turning and turning in the widening gyre. If you've ever, used a gyroscope like turns, it spins in circles. And a gyre, real quick here, just 1 minute. Here's what a gyre is.
So a gyre is a natural phenomenon. A gyre is simply a rotating current system that's comprised of the Earth's rotation coupled with currents and prevailing winds. So it's essentially like a massive whirlpool, a vortex in the oceans. Say a piece of floating plastic from California in the North Pacific Gyre can take 10 years to make the rotation from California to Japan and all the way back.
So what we have found is that these plastic particles are not just in the North Pacific Gyre, they're in all 5 subtropical gyres.
All right, so this is kind of telling you about how trash in gyres in the ocean works, like how these big trash islands can form. That's not the important part so much as that a gyre is just this, it's the circular motion, this whirlpool, okay, like a spiral. Like a tornado, like a hurricane. It's a spiral. So it's a storm, all right? So here's how the second coming goes. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. A falconer is somebody who trains falcons, okay, and a falcon is obviously a bird. So if you see a falconer training a falcon, You'll often see that they will have them tethered to a string, and the falcon can only fly in circles above the falconer. Okay, so it's again this idea of a spiral going round and round and round. So the falcon cannot hear the falconer, meaning if the falcon can't hear the falconer, then the falcon can't follow the directions. Things are going to lose control. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. Again, this idea of a central point where everything is being controlled. And if that center can't hold, okay, in that spiral, then everything is going to fling off into the distance. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere the ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity. Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming, hardly are those words out when the vast image out of spiritus mundi, that's the spirit of the world, troubles my sight. Somewhere in the sands of the desert, a shape with a lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving its slow thighs, while all about it, real shadows of the indignant desert birds. This is talking about the Sphinx. The Sphinx, big giant Sphinx, woman's head, lion's body in the desert in Egypt. So it's this image of the lion, the Sphinx sitting there, and the birds flying in circles around it. All around it, real shadows of indignant desert birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle, and what rough beast its hour come round at last slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. So this poem has a lot of religious imagery, and I'm not going to get into all the little details of it, but what I want you to get here, the gist of it is, the second coming is about this idea that all of a sudden the world has been reduced to chaos, and the world is waiting for that moment when Jesus, the Savior, will come again to straighten everything out. Okay? So when they refer to the second coming, I want you to at least be familiar with this poem and at least know that much about it. The idea is that everything in the world is just spinning into chaos and waiting for something or someone to arrive and put everything right again. Okay? All right. So there's that. Finally, this Pettibone, and I think that's how he says his name, maybe it's Pettibone, but Pettibone painting that is referred to, the one that's hanging on Davis's wall, okay? I found an image that claims that this is the painting, okay? So this spiral painting that Asa keeps referring to and thinking about that's in Davis's house looks like this. And there you have it. Okay? So that is your assignment for today. Sorry, it was a little bit long, but I wanted to make sure that you understood some of the allusions. Allusion being A-L-L-U-S-I-O-N, meaning references to other literature. Okay? That's it. Have a great day.